On the line with me, our old buddy Dean Obeidallah, host of the Dean Obeidallah Show, weekdays 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time, Sirius XM Progress, channel 127. Columnist with the Daily Beast, contributor to the New Republic. deanofradio.com is his website. Dean Obeidallah is the Twitter handle, and also at SXM Progress. Dean, the other day I heard, I think you say your name, and it sounded different than the way I've been saying it. Have I been mispronouncing your name?
You know, I'm not a stickler for how people pronounce it because people have spun it so many different ways. From, I say Obeidallah. I was just on my friend Captain Rashid's show.
Okay.
Obeidallah. I was on my other friend's show. He's Muslim. He's South Asian background, and he says Obeidallah. So Pakistani Americans, Indian Americans who are Muslim, Obeidallah, Obeidallah, or growing up in Jersey, I was Obeidallah, or Dean owes me $1. So any of those are completely acceptable.
Okay.
I'm pretty easygoing. If you screw up my first name, it's intentional. It's Dean. It couldn't be easier. My last name, it's a challenge. I get it.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Sorry for that. I probably should have tried to hop on, before we got on the air and have that conversation with you. Anyway, you wrote an absolutely brilliant piece over at newrepublic.com titled "Biden is shedding the support of his base, and that could be bad for democracy." Lay out your premise.
Sure. And, I now periodically write for the New Republic, in addition to CNN and MS, because my friend Michael Tomasky, who's at the Beast, went over to the New Republic. And my point is, it's not like some of these articles like Biden's doomed and nothing's working. It's more like, here's what I'm hearing from listeners to my show. It was all based on listeners plus polling, explaining why has Joe Biden been dropping among Democrats, because that's the concerning thing for an off-year election. It's getting us out. And I wrote this with an eye to, there's plenty of time to change it. There's about 294 days to election day. There's time to change it. Well, people should know, we all see the top lines. President Biden's approval rating has dropped from the mid-50s to like lower 40s. But among Democrats, it's actually more acute. He's dropped from as late as June, he had a 95% approval among Democrats per Gallup. 95%. Latest polls, 74% approval among Democrats. He's lost more, 20 points among Democrats, than he has in the general public.
Wow.
And so I put it out to listeners and to talk about it, and that's sort of what the article came out.
Well, and the crisis here is that midterm elections, which this year is, it's not a presidential election year, midterm elections tend to be base elections. You see a substantial drop-off in voting, and mostly it's, the candidates who win are the candidates who have succeeded in energizing their bases. And if the Democratic base is becoming disenchanted with Biden, or with the Biden administration, or more generally with what Democrats have been able to accomplish in the face of this insane obstruction by Sinema and Manchin, it doesn't bode well for the 2022 election. That's my big concern around this,
exactly.
Dean.
And that's exactly mine. And I'm sure everyone who listens to your show, we get that. We're all adults. You've been around for a while. We understand midterms elections. You need your base to come out, or you need to get enough people who hate the president, whoever that president is, to come out. So 2018, we had a big wave of people, of Democrats, and those who hated Trump came out. We captured the House. Right. So I was curious, what has caused this drop-off? And I put it up to listeners several times over a few weeks. And the same two issues came back over and over again for why they're not going to vote Republican. They're just losing enthusiasm for Biden. And it wasn't Build Back Better. It had to do with two things. One, holding Donald Trump accountable for the January 6th terrorist attack and the coup. And two is voting rights, and not making that a focus for the entire year, or at least for the last 6 months of the year, to GOP passing laws. And those are the two issues I heard over and over again. The only other one I heard once in a while was canceling student loan debt. But the other two by far were the animators, that we need President Biden to talk about holding Donald Trump, or holding all accountable, if he doesn't want to say Trump, in more than one speech. And then Merrick Garland's got to step up. And if he doesn't, then Biden has to consider a new AG. That's something I heard over and over from people. People might be listening and disagree. I'm sharing what I heard from people. The other thing, which is equally as important, voting rights. The fierce urgency of now is missing in terms of voting rights. And look where we are now. That had been building for the last 6 months. Maybe we're not at the place where we are in Manchin and Sinema think they can get away with this easily. Yeah. It's not over. There's still time. But those are the two big issues.
I think that what happened, and I'd love to get your take on this, Dean. You're an astute observer of politics and what's going on. But it seems to me like what happened was when the Biden administration got rolling in January, They were presented with a crisis. I mean, you know, we had a pandemic. People were dying at insane rates. Trump had done nothing but make it worse for a whole year. And so the first priority was economic. You know, put the country back together and get the shots in people's arms, economic and public health. And they did a spectacular job of that. We're a year down the road now, and people are not feeling that pressure. In fact, there was a study, and I'm brain farting here on where it came from. It might have been the Fed. It was one of these agencies saying that people's bank accounts, the balance in your bank accounts of the average person, the median bank account in America, has more money in it now than it did before the pandemic. Substantially more, like 30, 40, 50% more. I mean, substantially more. Now, you know, most people don't have that much in the bank anyway. About half of America can't deal with a $1,000, you know, expense that is unplanned. So obviously, we're not talking on an individual level huge amounts of money, but you know, Biden succeeded in getting money into people's accounts, which is why the economy has heated up, which is why we have inflation, in part. I mean, you know, is that demand is back, right? The economy is back, and yet we're in the middle of this horrible thing. And so they put that at the front of the burner. They said, okay, first thing, shots in arms, bring the economy back. And then that will make us sufficiently popular. And they were hugely popular, as you point out, in June, you know. That will make us sufficiently popular that we can then push through voting rights. And I think the miscalculation was, well, maybe it's not even a miscalculation. I mean, how do you get around the fact that Manchin and Sinema have been saying literally since last year, you know, since the election, have been saying, no, we're not going to go along with changes to the filibuster. We are down with the right-wing billionaires and their network. You know, you're not going to get what you want. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, and let's be honest. When President Biden came in, the focus was COVID, and it should have been COVID. We had 3,000 plus people dying a day. We had places closed down all over. Unemployment was, in Trump's last full month in office, 6.7%. It's now down to 3.9%. That's because of Biden's policies. He had to pass the COVID relief bill. But then after that, it became infrastructure and Build Back Better. And not, except for one speech in July on voting rights, there was not, as MLK talked about, the fierce urgency of now in regards to this issue, which was voting rights. So, look, you've got to put pressure on Manchin and Sinema. There's got to be consequences. I think they have to start talking about the consequences out loud. They're going to support primary opponents. Because if you're going to choose preserving the filibuster over preserving our democracy, you're not a Democrat.
Right.
There's no other red line I have.
Well, you're not even a patriot. I mean, you're not even a genuine American.
You're right. You're on the side. In this case, you're not just complicit. You're knowingly enabling the GOP to destroy and undermine our democracy and usher in, at this point, a fascist movement. And that's what we're seeing because they embrace violence. So it's beyond complicit. You are enabling, and they're doing it intentionally. And if they leave the party or if President Biden has to make a choice between the Democratic constituency that elected him or keeping Manchin and Sinema happy, he better pick the Democratic base. Even if that means you don't get judges through for a while, because you might get some Republicans to join on that, but they're not going to pass legislation anyway.
So there was a strategic miscalculation here, Dean. Forgive the interruption, but you know, basically, you know, instead of rolling out Build Back Better next, they should have been rolling out voting rights next. But it might well have ended up in the exact same place because of Manchin and Sinema. And in fact, I think almost certainly would have, because the billionaires who are funding Manchin or Sinema and the fossil fuel industry that is funding Manchin and that he's part of, really don't want voting rights because their tax cuts and deregulations depend on Republicans staying in control. And that's the bottom line. So,
exactly.
You know, if you're, I was just a little bit ago on Chuck Todd or Andrea Mitchell's show, whatever, I noticed the chyron on MSNBC was the White House plots to reboot Biden presidency. Well, plots is pretty evil language to use, you know, definitely a pejorative. But I mean, how do you change? How do you reboot your presidency when you're being sabotaged by people in your own party? You know, yes, we can argue about the order in which Biden should have been presenting things, and you know, but hey, you know what? Yeah, they may well have been thinking, hey, if we do voting rights and we lose, which we will because of Manchin and Sinema, then Build Back Better and bipartisan infrastructure bill are dead. We're not even going to get to that. That's kind of the end of the presidency.
It's like a coach in a football game. You make choices, and then you're held accountable for your choices, right or for wrong. I'm telling you, from what I listen, from my listeners, and I was talking to Joe Madison, I had him on last week. He heard the same thing from people he talks to on his show and in real life, who have said they're going to sit out in 2022. They're openly saying that now. People in our base, they're never going to vote Republican. They see the risk. I'm hopeful between now and November 8th we can make the case that, look, our democracy, everything we believe in is on the line. Let's win. Let's win a few more Senate seats like in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania so we can marginalize the voices of Sinema and Manchin. We hold on to the rest of the seats and then change things. But, look, that's what they're saying. That's what they want to hear. And holding Trump accountable, don't dismiss that, Tom. People want to see a guy who waged a terrorist attack, people who engage in seditious conspiracies from the 11 charges now. They did that for one reason, as the charging documents say, because Donald Trump called them to the Capitol with his tweets and his lies. It is right in the charging documents that they cite Donald Trump's tweets from mid-December of 2020 saying it's going to be wild. I go, Trump wants us there. It's going to be wild. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's literally in their own text and encrypted communication that the FBI has put in the charging documents.
Yep. Donald
Trump, you cannot wage a coup and go play golf. That's not the penalty. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm completely with you, Dean. And I saw two stories last week suggesting in credible media, let's call it, that Merrick Garland and the DOJ are not even looking at Trump.
I saw that.
If that's the case, I am shocked, and I think that politically that's poison for the Democrats.
Horrible mistake.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, Dean, fight for it.
Yeah. We pushed it all the way to the hard break here at 18. Thanks so much for dropping by, Dean Obeidallah, the Dean Obeidalla Show on Sirius XM right here on this channel. A little later in the day, 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time. DeanofRadio.com or Dean Obeidalla on Twitter or SiriusXM Progress, SXM Progress. Dean, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Tom. Great talk.
Great talking with you, too.